It's beautiful outside, and my neighbor's cutting his grass. So you get a little mini microphone like all the other influencers. I'm Justine Folker, and I help people and leaders and small business owners and entrepreneurs basically find their way back home from feeling lost and exhausted and completely misaligned and wondering how they got to where they are and why are they so miserable in their work. I help them find their way home through the courage skills. And this is Courage Tuesday, where I share with you where the courage work shows up in my everyday real life. I actually met with a potential client last week. I met with the CEO and then the director. And, they were like, we have always loved our culture. We've always been proud of our culture. We've always intentionally built our culture. And things just seem hard, especially these last 6 years. And we don't want to just like blame COVID. And like at the same time, it's like, it is different. And I was like, okay, well, we're never going back and the world is forever different. And so are people. And I was like, what, but we're not going to blame just COVID because, we can't change that. We can change something now. And so I was like, what do you think the root cause is? And they're like, I don't really know. And I was like, cause I believe everything has a root cause. And I said, what's it feel like? And they're like, I just don't like there's just a lot of behavior that's not aligned with our values and people just kind of come and do their job. And I go, it feels transactional. And she was like, yes. And I was like, and there's behaviors like gossip and back channeling and finger pointing and blaming and like comparison to other teams and other people. And we are just kind of like come do our job and then leave. And they're like, yes, oh my gosh, that's it. And I said, people really are not okay. Like just on average, I don't think many people are okay. On top of that, their lives are very, very, very full of stress and worry and burnout and just full of activities and things. Like no one has white space anymore. And we choose to like relax by scrolling our devices, which means we are consuming everyone's opinions about everything, which we are never supposed to have all that access. And we are seeing everything that happens all over the world the second it happens, which we were also like, our brains just and souls more so are not necessarily wired for that. And so we're adapting. Do we want to though to that? And so I was like, I also wonder like, what are your team members' values? How do their values show up within your organization's values? And I'm going to come back to that like 80-20 rule. Like we spend 80% of our energy and time focused on and trying to manage the 20% of people that like aren't necessarily on board with the values or helping us build the culture. And I was like, and I don't necessarily think that we need that 20% to be part of building our culture back to where we want it. We can't though have those 20% of people harming the culture and working against the people who are wanting to help us restore our culture. And so I want to start with root cause of like, who are they? What makes them them? And what makes them their values like show up? How do they show up within the organization's values? And how do they show up as who they are here? And how can they help us restore the culture? And when we have people back in their values, and then we also teach them how to take better care of themselves, because very few people know how to actually care well for themselves, which means they are constantly trying to give from an empty well. And you cannot give from something that you never fill up. You cannot pour out from something that is empty because you constantly give and give and give and only fill up by scrolling your freaking phone. And so we're going to start with our values. We're going to do some emotional well-being, and then we're going to teach them how to take care of themselves. And then we're going to talk about like, who are you and how do you want to show up here? And how do you show up authentically and practice vulnerability rather than seeking connection in things like gossip and back channeling and teasing behaviors that do not build a courageous culture. They are, though, I truly believe, a sincere connection, seeking for like a bid for connection. I just like I'm so tired and burnt out and not okay myself that I'm not going to share with you about my life and be vulnerable about my life, but I sure as heck will tell you about Susie's life and gossip with you about her. It just feels easier, even though the return is eroding at our trust and actually at our own souls too, because it's not who we want to be. And that those kinds of behaviors are not aligned with our values. And so we're going to talk about authenticity and how they show up here. And then we're going to walk into how we connect with one another and how we turn back toward one another, because we've turned back towards ourselves through our values, our emotional well-being, taking care of ourselves and showing up authentically. So then we're going to talk about how we turn toward one another, and we're going to operationalize trust, and we're going to repair trust. And we can talk about the ways that shame shows up in our organizations, how we react from it, and how gossip and teasing and finger pointing and blaming and overfunctioning and underfunctioning and perfectionism and all of these things, like they're not connective tissue. They will not help us restore our cultures to where we want them to be. Maybe they're never going back to where they were. We can still restore them into something even better, though. And so we talk about how to turn back toward one another and how to love and lead others well, have care and dignity and respect for one another. And then finally, we do the work. Pathway 5, courage is built here. Like, we're going to talk about how all of those things show up in behavior. And most of all, I'm going to help them rewrite stories that they have told themselves for probably much of their lives. I'm going to help them restory their stories in order to restore their courage. And that will restore your culture. I will help them live from those values deeply rooted in the foundational truths of who they are. And when they show up from that place every day here at work, even if they are part of the 20% that just want to come, do their job and do it right and leave, they're at least not damaging the culture further. Those 80% though, they want to help build it. And frankly, we spend way more time awake at work than we do at home with the people who love us the most. Like, be you unapologetically and be part of restoring the culture to be fun and healthy and courageous again. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want help bringing this work into your organization or your small business, or you as a leader, as an entrepreneur, want to harness these skills, I would love to talk with you and all the different ways that we can help you embed it.